Get ready to enter the Thrivetime Show. 3, 2, 1, boom!
Hello, Thrive Nation. Welcome back to the conversation. It is the Thrivetime Show on your radio. During today's podcast, we have a very special opportunity to sit down. We had a special opportunity to sit down with the man who was an NBA Hall of Famer, David Robinson, a guy who was named as one of the 50 best basketball players of his generation, of all time, actually. A man who won 2 gold medals while playing and representing his country. A guy who's gone on to have actually more success off the court than he had on the court. How could you possibly have more success off the court than on the court when you won 2 gold medals and 2 NBA championships? Well, that's what David Robinson has done. And during today's podcast, during this interview with David, I asked him, how do you deal with people that refuse to follow the system? How do you deal with people like Dennis Rodman? Dennis Rodman, the Dennis Rodman, the guy who is a friend of Kim Jong-un, of the guy who is hanging out with the North Korean dictator. Well, he played basketball on the same team as Dennis Rodman. So how do you possibly deal with a person like Dennis Rodman? How do you hold people accountable? What if you have to fire somebody? What if you run a business and people just refuse to follow your system? That is the focus of this interview with the incredible, the gifted, the charismatic, the high character, the diligent, the family-focused man, the friend, the partner that I know as David Robinson.
Fire employees who corrupt the culture.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's take it to the NBA for a second.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to have a guy on the team who just says, "Hey, I appreciate that you've laid out specifically, your mission here. I appreciate that you have disciplinary policies in play,
right.
But I am just going to continue to be crazy. I'm going to just be as crazy as possible." At a certain point, David, business people, they're going to have to fire somebody. And right. I see this all the time. I talked to a guy the other day who's late 30s who had said, "I've never fired an employee." And his business hasn't grown ever, though, okay? And he was wanting to bring me in as a consultant, and I just did an assessment, and I talked to some of the key employees, and I said, "Hey, we have a culture issue here."
Right.
You have people that are in the back when customers are in the front. Nobody's even in the building on lunch. You have calls aren't getting returned. It's just a cultural issue.
Right.
You're the head. You're going to have to get serious about it. I want to know what steps you've taken. And he says, "Well, this person just has refused to do anything. I've warned them. So when we get to that point where we have to fire, nobody wants to do it.
Right.
But I want to know, how do you know when it's time to fire somebody?
Clearly it depends on situation and person. I like to try to give people as much the benefit of the doubt as possible.
Yeah.
And that's a personal thing.
Okay.
Some people are no nonsense. They don't even want to deal with first sign of trouble. They get rid of people, and that's fine. It really has to do with your personality. If you are a patient person, that's fantastic. Give people the benefit of the doubt, but understand also that we go back to mission. We go back to, what are we trying to accomplish? Is this working for our organization? And that's why all of this structure is so important. People rarely want to sit around and take the time out to write all of these things out and make sure that there's expectations and make sure that there's consequences and make sure that there's steps. But these things help you make these decisions. When we reach step 3, it's time to let somebody go.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really key here to have the leadership team in place, which equates to culture, making sure that they understand what the expectations are, and then the steps, and then it's easy to say, okay, it's time. And we can make it very clear to the person, because you don't fit our culture. You don't fit what's happening here. Our experiment has not been successful.
Well, I think what everybody watching this, we're unanimous that we want to win. You won on the court, which a lot of players don't do. You won 2 championships. You won gold medals. I mean, you see, you won, and then we say, well, and I'm just going to pretend if you're the sawed-off version, you're the smaller version. If it's the 6'1" version of David Robinson, I would argue that you would be successful in any field because of some of the principles that you live by. But then you went and you started a school with really no experience having started a school.
Exactly.
And the school has done well.
Done very well, yeah.
So you've been blessed and you're winning in those areas. And so I just want to know, did it break your heart when you had to fire the first employee over there at Carver? Or did you ever have to fire somebody? Was it hard for you? Because you're a guy who cares about people.
Yes, we've had to fire people several times.
Okay.
And yeah, it does a little bit. It breaks my heart a little bit. But I think that when I make it clear what I'm expecting, then it's not a personal issue. And I let people know that, hey, you just don't work here. That doesn't mean you don't work. You may work somewhere else. You just don't work here. And so I've always tried to focus on the positive things about even when I had to let someone go. Failure is something we all experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that failure. That's the only way you're going to grow, right? Trials and tribulations. Without those things, you have no opportunity to grow whatsoever. And so I look at those times as more of a positive time and saying, hey, this is my opportunity to let them know this is something you need to learn from.
Okay.
Right? So this didn't work. I'll tell you why it didn't work here. Now, either you can take that and listen and learn and move on, or you can fight it and deny it and say, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Okay, I'll accept that. It's my fault, but it didn't work. I have the ability to move you on, and I'm moving you on. So I think if we can understand that even for the person that's being fired, it can be a really positive experience. They need to know something's wrong, or else they can't fix it.
So you just don't work here.
You just don't work here. You're a great worker, just not here.